All right, so let's dive into this idea that you shared. Life is not a boardroom meeting, it's a party. I thought that was such a cool way to look at things, and I think we should explore that a little bit.
Yeah, it is a cool way to look at it. On the one hand, you have the boardroom with all of the structure and the strategy and, trying to achieve specific outcomes. And then on the other hand, you have a party, which is all about like, the experience and connecting with people and just being in the moment and living in the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And, I feel like for so many people, the boardroom metaphor really resonates and maybe even hits a little too close to home because we're just constantly bombarded with all of these messages about productivity and optimizing our lives and achieving all of our goals, and it can be really easy to get caught up in that and kind of forget about just enjoying life and experiencing life.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great point. It's like when we were so focused on, checking things off the list and sort of like, approaching life as like a series of tasks rather than like an adventure to be savored.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that brings up an interesting question. If we were to really take this boardroom metaphor seriously, what would that even look like?
Well, I mean, you can imagine a world where every interaction is governed by like, agendas and bullet points. Spontaneity is like totally frowned upon. It's like a disruption to the plan.
You can't go off script.
Exactly. And like laughter even like has to be scheduled into your quarterly projections.
I love that. You know what I'm saying? I've definitely in meetings where it felt like a good laugh was almost like, we were doing something wrong. Like it was against the rules.
Right.
It's like, whoa, hold on, wait a minute. This is supposed to be serious.
Yeah.
But it's not just meetings. It's also, life outside of work. It's like, always having to have a plan, always having to be optimizing. It sounds exhausting.
Yeah, it is exhausting. And there's actually, a lot of research that shows that chronic stress and the pressure to constantly perform, can really like hinder your creativity and your ability to come up with new ideas and innovate and even just, your well-being and your happiness.
Wow. So it's not even just, missing out on some fun. It's like this boardroom approach can actually be bad for us.
Yeah, it could be really detrimental to your success and happiness in the long run.
Yeah.
Because when you're so focused on, outcomes and like external validation, you can lose touch with like what actually motivates you, what brings you a sense of purpose and fulfillment.
Right. And that's where this idea of the party comes in, right? It's kind of like the opposite of that. It's like the antidote to that really structured, achievement, obsessed way of being.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. The party really represents like a shift in focus. It's about being present. It's about connecting with other people. And, it's about just like enjoying the experience, even if it's messy or unpredictable.
Right. And it's funny because when you think about an actual party, there's usually some planning involved, right? Like you send out invitations, maybe you do some decorating, you think about the kind of vibe you want to create. But like the best parties are usually the ones where something unexpected happens, right? Or where people just like, let loose and have fun and create memories that weren't part of the plan.
Yeah, I love that point. I think that highlights something really important. It's not about rejecting all structure or planning in our lives. It's about finding that balance between intention and spontaneity, right? It's like having a sense of direction, but also being open to, detours along the way.
So it's not about quitting our jobs and dancing on tables 24/7.
Right. Although,
I mean, a little midday dance break never hurt anyone.
exactly. It's about bringing that spirit of playfulness and connection and, present moment awareness into our everyday lives, even in the midst of all of our responsibilities.
Okay, I like that. That makes a lot of sense. But it also brings up like a lot of questions, right? Like how do we actually find that balance? What does it even look like to like bring that party energy into a world that can often feel very serious and structured?
Those are great questions, and I think they're questions that we'll keep coming back to as we continue this conversation. But, before we go any further, I'm curious to hear what you think about all of this. What resonates with you about this idea of the boardroom versus the party? Do you feel like your life is more aligned with one or the other right now, or?
Yeah. And, I think it's interesting that you bring up this idea of balance because when we talk about the party side of the metaphor, we're not talking about, like pure hedonism or like escaping responsibility or anything like that. It's really more about like a shift in perspective. Right. Yeah. It's not about like throwing all caution to the wind and just like living for the moment with no regard for the consequences.
Exactly. It's more about recognizing that like life is meant to be enjoyed. It's not just about, enduring it or getting through it. It's about finding those moments of joy and connection and allowing ourselves to like really savor those experiences.
So it's about being intentional about bringing that, party spirit into our lives, even in the midst of our everyday routines and responsibilities.
Yeah, exactly. It's about finding those little pockets of joy, those moments that remind us that life is, more than just a to-do list.
Right. Yeah. It's like taking back control of our own experience and choosing to focus on the things that make us feel alive and energized.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be anything like drastic or, over the top. It could be as simple as, putting on some music while you're cooking dinner or, taking a different route on your walk to work or, calling a friend instead of scrolling through social media.
Right. It's about those small choices that we make throughout the day that can really add up over time.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're curating your own personal playlist of joy.
I love that.
And just like with a playlist, you can, experiment with different tracks and see what resonates with you. Maybe it's trying a new hobby or spending more time in nature or, even just allowing yourself to be more present in your everyday interactions.
Now, you mentioned earlier that, research shows that this constant striving for achievement can actually be detrimental to our well-being. Is there any research that suggests that, kind of the opposite is true, that embracing a more playful, joyful approach to life can actually make us more successful?
Yeah, actually, there's a lot of research on that. And what it shows is that people who prioritize positive emotions and experiences tend to be more resilient. They're more adaptable. They're more creative. They're better at problem solving and decision making.
That makes sense. When you're in a good mood, it's easier to think outside the box and come up with, new ideas.
Exactly. And it's not just about feeling good in the moment. Cultivating positive emotions can actually have like a ripple effect. It can impact our relationships, our work, our overall sense of well-being.
So we've established that, this party spirit is good for our souls and potentially even our careers, but like, how do we actually make it happen? Where do we start?
Well, I think one practical step is to start paying attention to your energy levels throughout the day. Notice when you're feeling drained or depleted, and then ask yourself, what can I do right now to bring a little bit of joy into this moment?
So it's about becoming more self-aware, tuning into our own needs and recognizing when we need a joy boost.
Exactly. And it could be something really small. It could be like taking 5 minutes to listen to your favorite song or stepping outside for a breath of fresh air or, even just like stretching your body and taking a few deep breaths.
Yeah, those little moments can make a big difference for sure. But what about those times when I feel like really stuck? When it's hard to find anything to feel joyful about, life throws curveballs sometimes and it can feel like the music has stopped and the party's over.
Right. And that's a really important point. And I think that's where the metaphor of the party can be really helpful because even in the midst of challenging times, even when we're facing, setbacks or heartbreak or loss, we can still choose to approach life with a sense of openness and, a willingness to find moments of beauty and connection.
So it's about finding those like glimmers of light, even in the darkest of times.
Yeah, exactly. It might not be a full-blown dance party, but it could be, a quiet moment of reflection or a heartfelt conversation with a friend or simply appreciating the beauty of a sunrise.
Right. It's like those moments at a party where you step away from the crowd for a bit, maybe have a deep conversation with someone, and then you come back feeling, refreshed and reconnected.
Exactly. Those quieter moments are just as important as the high energy ones. It's all about finding that balance that works for you.
It's interesting because we often associate, parties with being really extroverted and outgoing, but I think there's also a way to embrace that party spirit in a more like introverted way.
Absolutely. It's not about forcing yourself to be someone you're not. It's about finding ways to celebrate life that feel authentic and aligned with your own personality and preferences.
So it's not about pretending that everything's always perfect or putting on a happy face when you're struggling. It's about finding those genuine moments of joy and connection, even in the midst of, the messiness and unpredictability of life.
Exactly. It's about embracing the full spectrum of human experience, the highs and the lows, the laughter and the tears, and finding a way to like celebrate it all.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Now, that being said, I know that Not everyone's life feels like a party all the time. In fact, I imagine for some people, the boardroom metaphor feels a lot more familiar. So, what advice would you give to someone who's feeling stuck in that mindset? Someone who's longing for more joy and spontaneity, but doesn't really know where to begin?
I think the first step is to just become aware of how much of your life feels like a boardroom meeting. Are you constantly scheduling and optimizing even your leisure time? Are you prioritizing achievement over enjoyment? Are you afraid to let loose and be silly?
So, it's about identifying those areas where we might be taking ourselves a little too seriously.
Exactly. And then once you have that awareness, you can start to make small changes. Maybe you schedule a play date with yourself, or you give yourself permission to leave work early one day and do something just for fun.
It's about giving ourselves permission to prioritize joy, even if it feels a little bit uncomfortable at first.
Exactly. And as you start to make those choices, as you start to create more space for playfulness and connection in your life, you might find that the universe starts to conspire with you and bring more opportunities for joy and serendipitous moments your way.
Like the more you party, the more the party finds you.
Exactly. And the more you embrace that playful, open-hearted, adventurous spirit, the more life will surprise and delight you with its own unexpected twists and turns.
This has been such a cool conversation so far. We've covered so much ground, but I feel like there's still more to uncover. What other nuggets of wisdom do you have for us as we kind of wrap up this exploration of life as a party? It's interesting. We've been talking about this balance, between the boardroom and the party, but I'm realizing it's not just about our schedules or, our to-do lists. It's also about that voice in our head, that inner dialogue that can sometimes feel like a board meeting.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're so good at planning parties for other people, but sometimes we forget to extend that same generosity and playfulness to ourselves.
Yeah, totally. And that inner critic can be like a real party pooper,
Oh, for sure.
Like that voice that's always telling you, you're not doing enough, or you should be further along by now, or what will people think? It's like, come on.
Yeah.
Let me enjoy the party.
It's hard to have fun when you've got that kind of negativity swirling around in your head.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, how do you quiet that voice?
Well, I think it is practice. It's about learning to quiet that inner critic and turn up the volume on your inner cheerleader.
Right.
One technique that I found helpful is to actually visualize those negative thoughts as if they were like unwelcome guests at your party. So you can politely but firmly show them the door and remind them that this is a space for joy and celebration.
I love that. I love that visualization. It's like, sorry, negativity, you're not on the guest list tonight.
Exactly.
We're focusing on good vibes only.
Yeah, and the more you practice this, the more natural it becomes to just kind of shift your focus away from those negative thought patterns and toward a more positive and supportive inner dialogue.
So, we're talking about being mindful of our thoughts and intentionally choosing to focus on the positive. But what about when those negative thoughts are, coming from a real place? Like, what about when they're rooted in real challenges or setbacks that we're facing in our lives? Life isn't always sunshine and rainbows, and sometimes it's hard to, find that party spirit when you're dealing with difficult emotions.
That's true. And I think it's important to acknowledge that it's okay to not feel like partying all the time. Life has its ups and downs, and it's important to allow ourselves to feel the full range of human emotions, even the uncomfortable ones.
Yeah, it's not about denying or suppressing those feelings, right? It's about making space for them.
Yeah.
While also remembering that joy and hope still exist, even in the midst of, pain or struggle.
Right. It's like those moments at a party when someone spills their drink or trips and falls. It's a little awkward, maybe even embarrassing, but everyone understands that it's just part of the experience.
Right.
And usually those moments end up becoming like funny stories that people share and laugh about later on.
That's such a good analogy. It's like saying that even in those messy, imperfect moments, there's still a way to find humor and connection and even a sense of resilience.
Exactly. And I think that's a key part of embracing this whole life as a party philosophy. It's not about pretending that everything is always perfect or trying to force ourselves to feel happy all the time. It's about cultivating an attitude of acceptance and gratitude and a willingness to find joy even in the most unexpected places.
It's about recognizing that the party isn't always going to be perfect, but it's still worth showing up for.
That's beautifully said. And I think that leads us perfectly into another really important aspect of this metaphor, which is the idea of generosity and sharing the joy. At a party, we don't hoard all the good snacks or keep the music to ourselves. We share the abundance. and we create a collective experience where everyone feels welcome and celebrated.
Right. So how does that translate to our everyday lives?
Well, it could be as simple as, offering a kind word to a stranger or helping a colleague with a project or simply being present and listening attentively when someone needs to talk.
Right. It's about extending that party spirit outward, creating a ripple effect of joy and positivity that spreads to those around us.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the most powerful things about embracing this whole philosophy. It's not just about our own individual happiness. It's about creating a more joyful and connected world for everyone.
It's like we're all invited to this grand celebration of life, and we each have the power to make it even more vibrant and meaningful by, sharing our joy, our kindness, and our unique gifts with the world.
Beautifully said. And, as we wrap up this deep dive, I just want to encourage everyone listening to keep exploring this metaphor, to keep asking themselves, what does it mean for me to approach life as a party?
And to remember that, the party is not a destination, it's a journey. It's about embracing the present moment and connecting with others and creating a life that feels authentic and joyful and truly unforgettable.
So well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Go out there and celebrate life in all its messy, glorious beauty.
And don't forget to invite us to your party. We'll bring the confetti.